Welcome to WYCD Wicked, that stands for What You Can Do. Oh, I just took this whole thing down, and now she's back. Thank you for joining me on this burst of two streams on Two for Tuesday. If you're just now joining us, you're probably familiar with the fact that we had two false starts earlier. Not even sure if we went live the second time. We sure did try to. But yes, we had some tech issues that have been resolved. So we're going to hop right into it. Good to see you. Rust Blocks, Wicked Foxy Dragon, the whole gang as you arrive. It's good to see you. I wanted to highlight some good work that the Democrats are doing. Let's talk about it. Give me a chance to hit the record button here. So the Democrats are actually, my God, earning their keep. They're taking some swings. They're making the Republicans come out and stand by their rhetoric. They're making them vote with their rhetoric. Let's have a quick look at this. Check this out right now. Here's a bill put forth at the end of last month that I think is worthy of highlighting. This is from Pramila Jayapal, co-sponsored by Ed Markey. And it is the introduction of a trans Bill of Rights. I'm just going to straight up read the press release here for you, folks. Once we confirm that the mic is on. Yeah, it is. Good. Neat. U.S. Representative Pramila Jayapal, U.S. Senator Edward Markey, that's a Democrat from Washington and from Maryland, and Representative Sarah Jacobs, Mark Pocan, Mark Takano, and David Cicilline are reintroducing the Transgender Bill of Rights amidst unprecedented attacks on trans rights. This resolution provides a comprehensive policy framework to provide protections for transgender and non-binary people, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to thrive regardless of their gender identity or expression. Day after day, we see a constant onslaught of anti-trans rhetoric and legislation coming from elected officials. Today, we say enough is enough, said Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, co-chair of the Transgender Equality Task Force. Our Trans Bill of Rights says clearly to the trans community across the country that we see you and we will stand with you to ensure you are protected and given the dignity and respect that every person should have. With this resolution, we salute the resilience and courage of trans people across our country and outline a clear vision of what we must do in Congress in order to allow trans people to lead full, happy lives as their authentic selves. So look, this is not just talk. It is truly an outline. And it's an outline, which it probably won't surprise you to hear. To be truly effective requires we provide the people who want to enact this with the backup to do it, with the numbers, to get the votes. 2024, people. This is the sort of thing we could make happen. Ensuring that the Trans Bill of Rights calls on the federal government to provide protections for transgender and non-binary people by the way, thank you for including the non-binary people as well. Ensuring that transgender and non-binary people have equal access to services and public accommodations by amending the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to explicitly include gender identity and sex characteristics as protected characteristics, and amending federal education laws to explicitly clarify that they protect students from discrimination based on gender identity and sex characteristics. ensuring transgender and non-binary people have the ability to provide for themselves and their families by codifying Bostock, and clarifying that it is illegal to discriminate in employment, housing, and credit based on gender identity and sex characteristics. Hell yes. Ensuring every child has the right to grow up in a supportive environment by having their authentic identity respected in the classroom, ensuring that they can participate in school sports with their peers, and ensuring access to an inclusive curriculum. Recognizing the right to bodily autonomy and ethical health care by expanding access to gender-affirming medical care, codifying the right to abortion and contraception. Look at that, folks. Codifying the right to abortion and contraception. Protecting transgender people from discrimination in healthcare, and banning forced surgery on intersex children and infants in violation of ethical standards of care. Interesting little tidbit there. I'm not entirely sure how to read that last part. I don't know what practice it refers to, but based on the other things I'm seeing in this bill so far, I'm leaning towards not being concerned about it. Promoting the safety of trans and non-binary people. Also, yeah, it seems obvious to me. Promoting the safety of trans and non-binary people by investing in community services. Excuse me, I mean, it doesn't seem obvious to me, but I trust it. Promoting the safety of trans and non-binary people by investing in community services to prevent violence against trans and non-binary people, and expanding services for survivors, investing in mental health services designed for transgender and non-binary people, and banning so-called conversion therapy practices. Hell yes. Finally, enforcing the civil rights of transgender people by requiring the Attorney General to designate a liaison within the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice dedicated to advising and overseeing enforcement of the civil rights of transgender people. Look, legislation isn't going to go anywhere in 2023. But now we see what a significant coalition of Democrats are willing to do. Let's talk about it on the other side. Let's see what the Wicked community has to say. My biggest question is, how does anyone know, says Wicked Foxy Dragon, what someone identifies as? I mean, if you are trans, don't you dress as the gender you identify with? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Generally speaking, I think what this bill does functionally is something that Republicans, if they truly lived by the principles they claimed to have, at least when I was growing up, Republicans should be 100% behind. Which is to say, it allows parents and children basically to decide what the children's health care will be amongst themselves. And it prevents these extreme practices that we know to be harmful, such as the conversion therapy, which is just kiddie torture. That's all it ends up being. Whatever the intentions were, however these misguided intentions are imagined by the people that carry it out, the reality is torture for kids. So, I mean, what can you do to make this happen? The layup. You got to give these people the power to enact this. What we see here is something that a group of Democratic politicians are saying they are willing to fight for. These specific things, they say, they're willing to fight for. It's like a laundry list of stuff a progressive would generally want. So the answer is to give them what they need. Be ready. Be prepared. Make 2024 now a goal we are going to rush towards. Um, 2024 could be yet another election where we just barely keep the country going, where we manage to get just enough Democrats in power that Republicans aren't able to pull off a total dismantling of the way of life in the United States. They aren't able to convert America into a fascist Christian theocracy. Is what they're out and out doing right now. And it's not it's not an exaggeration. Texas, Florida, where Republicans are thoroughly in control, you have anti-American activity as the norm. 2024 can end that forever. If there is just a blue tidal wave in 2024, that's the end of either MAGA or the Republican Party as a whole. If it becomes clear amongst the MAGA crew that their policy set is a guaranteed way to lose, they'll just change their policy set. Maybe. If they were savvy enough, they might do that. But then that's the sort of thing you would have heard 20, 25 years ago. Now, maybe not. In which case, that is the end of the Republican Party. But it certainly spells the end for this struggle for democracy. If we, the people, deliver a strong message in 2024. So the way we save America, literally, is the same way that we get this transgender Bill of Rights passed. We give folks like Pramila Jayapal and Ed Markey the numbers they need to enact truly progressive legislation. Register to vote, vote. Make sure you vote in primaries. Go as far to the left as you can. They will be better representatives for the people. It genuinely is that simple. It ain't easy, but it is that simple. I'm proud of her, Pramila Jayapal. She's, not everybody in the squad has consistently put forth legislation that I was like, thank you, that is leading people, that is showing us what you can do, et cetera, if given the tools necessary. But Pramila Jayapal consistently has. Man, been a delight to watch her go. Oh, that ain't it. So, y'all are going to make fun of me, but they have so many people working for the network. It's Midas Touch. I got another Midas Touch one. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get off the habit. I'm not going to go cold turkey though. That's madness. No, I'm just reducing bit by bit the amount of Midas Touch I rely on. I admit your old pal Jake went a little hard on them for a while, or a little too much for a while. But let me do an intro. I'll tell you why I think we should have a look at this. So recently, Midas Touch, Prince Charming looking guy, the European fella. I don't recall his name, but he'll introduce himself, I'm sure. Brought up something I had not seen before, and I was tempted just to go to the clip, but I don't even know enough about sports to talk about this guy. So we're relying on them because a coach has been apparently bringing to ears that need to hear it a message of sanity. Have a look.
at what happened yesterday in Nashville at Covenant School and Covenant Presbyterian Church, and my family and I are grieving along with the rest of the community.
I couldn't believe it, so I wrote this thing down. This Senator Marsha Blackburn, her comment after the massacre. My office is in contact with federal, state, and local officials, and we stand ready to assist. In what? They're dead. What are you going to assist with? But they're going to cloak all this stuff, the myth of the Second Amendment, the freedom. It's a myth, it's a joke. It's just a game they play. I mean, that's freedom. Is it freedom for kids to go to school and try to socialize and try to learn and be scared to death that they might die that day? Well, that'll create a great environment. Is that freedom?
It's almost.
I mean, do you see? Do you see what I'm talking about? The coach of the Spurs. How many people are fans of that guy's team, do you reckon, that needed to hear this? That just needed to hear some straight talk? That the interpretation of the Second Amendment that so many people claim to care about is just pure nonsense. And the actual cost and the nonsense of Blackburn up there. I mean, it was a hell of a job. Clips in the description if you want to check it out without me yammering over it, but I happen to have a what you can do about it. So we're going to let it keep going.
Ritualistic in the wake of tragedy here in America that elected officials who could very well be doing something to help preserve the lives of children instead opt to hide behind hollow words, masquerade.
Also, come on. You see what I mean about Prince Charming? That's a Prince Charming haircut if I've ever seen one. Good God.
Rating as empathy.
I just grieve for what they're going through. We have to work to protect children at school, and that means increasing security. And I have had legislation that would allow for training and hiring of veterans and former law enforcement officials to serve as school safety officers and to help protect our schools. It is time for us to pass that and to help keep our children safe.
But what's also become a normality, but unfortunately doesn't get the airtime because it's not as sexy as discussing whether or not LeBron James' average is higher with or without a headband. It's when Greg Popovich airs his feelings. The San Antonio Spurs coach understands the power of his platform and has used it many a times in the past to address pertinent issues across the United States. And in this instance, well, he calls out elected officials by name. He designated the first 10 minutes of his post-game press conference to calling out Republicans by name for the response to the Tennessee school shooting, or lack thereof.
I couldn't believe it, so I wrote this thing down. This Senator Marsha Blackburn, her comment after the massacre. My office is in contact with federal, state, and local officials, and we stand ready to assist. In what? They're dead. What are you going to assist with? Cleaning up their brains off the wall? Wiping the blood off the schoolroom floor? What are you going to assist with?
God damn. I mean, he's right, though. And it needs to be that visceral. It needs to be that disturbing, because it is that. I'm just waiting for a right-wing host to say, "Oh, how dare he break decorum like that? How dare he talk like that at a press conference?" Jesus God. One of the questions future generations will have for us is why we allowed kids to be killed. Because collectively, we have. Even those of us who've been fighting every step of the way, our whole lives, some of us, failed. Kids are still killed regularly. So this is the sort of thing I would expect and, in fact, demand to see everybody at every level of society speaking out about this, including right-wingers. Because, look, as just was demonstrated, I'll go hard on the lefties, myself included. But let's not get it twisted about whose responsibility this ultimately is. Where the left has failed is in demanding the right act like human beings, insisting that they act like decent human beings. And we're gonna talk about that more in a little bit. But let's let this man say his piece.
And then there's Governor Lee. I'm sorry to go on and on, but Bill Lee. I'm closely monitoring the tragic situation. Please join us in prayer. What are you monitoring? They're dead. Children. They're dead. Amendment, the freedom. It's a myth. It's a joke. It's just a game they play. I mean, that's freedom. Is it freedom for kids to go to school and try to socialize and try to learn and be scared to death that they might die that day? But Ted Cruz will fix it because he's going to double the number of cops in the schools. That's what he wants to do. Well, that'll create a great environment. Is that freedom? Or is it freedom to have a congressman who could make a postcard with all his family holding rifles, including an AR-15 or whatever? Is that cool? Is that like street cred for a Republican? That's freedom? That's more important than protecting the kids? I don't get it. The greed of the gun lobbies and the manufacturers is obvious. We all know that. Money talks. But the cowardice and the selfishness of the legislators who are so scared to death of being primaried and losing their job, losing their power, losing their salary, you'd like to get each one of them in a room, just one by one, and say, what's more important to you? If you could vote for some good gun safety laws that most of the public agrees to, would you do that if it saved one kid? Or is your job and your money so important to you that you would say, screw the kid?
Now, as he usually does, Pop hits on several key areas here, none more so than politicians being anchored to the gun lobby. Now, Coach Popovich mentioned Marsha Blackburn here, who is one of Tennessee's 2 senators who has received $1.3 million from the NRA throughout her political career.
What happened yesterday in Nashville at Covenant School and Covenant Presbyterian Church, and my family and I are grieving along with the rest of the community, and I thank you.
Bullshit. They're not grieving. No, they're not. She has the ability to do something about this. She chooses not to. In fact, she chooses what she's doing right now by making this a debate over how many more armed people can we get inside schools with little kids in them. How many more guns can we put near our children? When she brings that up, she's actively working to make sure more kids get killed. She's not grieving with the rest of us. No, she is not.
Mr. Secretary, for your call yesterday, your kind remarks today, and violence against children is just one of the most.
Brutal editing.
I'm Marsha Blackburn. I stand for the Second Amendment, and I am so honored to be endorsed by the NRA.
Yeah, let's leave that up there for a moment. An NRA endorsement. Long term, this is what I want to work on with y'all. An NRA endorsement needs to mean you are for the death of children. Even if the NRA tomorrow starts themselves advocating for gun reform because they see the writing on the wall and they decide to, pull a Comics Code authority, essentially, and get some legislation in there that restricts how bad they can be before we do it for them. Maybe that's what they do. This fourth branch of the government that has wormed its way in against our will. Maybe. But even if they do that, there's no changing the fact that for the last 30 years, however long it's been since Columbine, 25 years? Doesn't change the fact that all of the school shootings since then, all the dead kids, the NRA had a hand in. So, one of the goals of this channel will be now to tie the NRA to the dead kids at every opportunity and make it clear that any politician advertising that they are endorsed by the NRA is themselves advertising that they help kill kids, because that is the truth. Let's let Midas keep doing its amazing work here. This is, I think, the best video they've put out in months.
Guns, well, they represent identity to the GOP. They act as a symbol of rebellion to them and Republican voters. That's why you see them constantly discuss them in campaign ads attacking Democrats. People like Marsha Blackburn, well, they know that, especially in the wake of tragedy, because there's a fear that that identity will be chipped away at. Think about it, only 37% of Republicans support assault weapons bans, and only 43% support a government database to track gun sales. Meanwhile, nationally, well, these restrictions have a much higher polling rate of around 63%. So yes, while the NRA plays a huge part financially, to me it's more so their contribution to identity that codifies guns as the symbol of the Republican Party. And the best way to chip away at that identity is to vote, especially in places like this.
And so once again, what you're saying to us, since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee. What you're really showing for the world is holding up a mirror to a state that is going back to some dark roots. A state in which the Ku Klux Klan was founded is now attempting another power grab by silencing the two youngest Black representatives and one of the only women, Democratic women in this body. That's what this is about.
But we need young leaders combating that identity in red states.
Ooh, I caught it, baby. One moment. Lots of notes. Still a great video. All right, starting with the end there, that young leaders comment. We don't need young leaders. I like this new generation. Like them a lot. In fact, I will be more forgiving of Gen Z. I will be hugely supportive by default of any Gen Z politician that I see, because I'm so impressed with this younger generation. But what we need is not youth in Congress. What we need is new voices in Congress. There's a huge difference there. There's plenty of people who have been in this country their whole lives, not involved in any way with politics, who need to get involved with politics. It's functionally very similar, but I just want to clarify that point because I think it's an important distinction. And case in point, I give you John Fetterman. The man has found a way to be useful even as he was experiencing literally crippling depression. He found a way to be useful. He's helped people who themselves have had, what was it? It wasn't a seizure. It was an aneurysm? Whatever the hell. A brain injury that led to depression. Well, he was brave enough on a national stage to talk about that, to explain what happened, and yes, to take the time he needed to recover and show us how it's done. It's incredibly, incredibly helpful. All right, going back, Greg Popovich talking about the NRA lobby. Once upon a time, talking about the money was restricted basically to the fringes. Wasn't the kind of thing I used to ever hear as being part of the conversation. At best, I would hear euphemisms, and my God, how wonderful is it that freaking coach of the San Antonio Spurs is out there saying, yeah, these punks take NRA money and they kill our kids for it. Yes. Well done, Popovich. Well done. What was the third point? Yes, gorgeous haircut. Good God almighty. So, no, there was that other point. The 63% he was talking about. Oh, the left. The left can't wait to pat 63% of Republicans on the back. And by the way, I'm no different. I'll go back to it, certainly, because that's a commendable opinion to have, except, where are they? 63% of Republican voters supposedly are for reasonable gun reform. Why don't I see them out there demanding it? Do you think the people that the lefties put in office need more motivation to vote this way or that? We're here trying to say, oh, their tactics need to be better. Their tactics need to be sharper. Okay. Why do they have any opposition at all to overcome? Republicans will also be aware of that 63% number. And they're aware of an additional fact, which is those 63% that say they're for reasonable gun reform aren't for it enough that they're willing to withhold a vote. They're more for harassing teenage girls outside of an abortion clinic. They're more for that than they are for saving the little kids. They're more for making sure black people have worse lives than they could. Than they're for saving kids. They're more for making sure Jeff Bezos can buy his 57th yacht and his employees are on food stamps than they are for saving kids. They're more for making sure the President of the United States is never subject to a criminal investigation when they commit a crime than they are for saving kids. I will not take a Republican voter seriously, and nor will the rest of the world, until we start seeing them coming out as Republican voters leading protests, not joining up and occasionally having a local news person saying, oh, and this person says they voted for Bush and then Trump one time, just one time, and Mitch McConnell a bunch of times, but they're here today in this march. Well, good for you, single Republican voter that they found in that crowd. Good for you. Lead one. Because just like what the left isn't doing is enough, what the right is doing is not nearly enough. And in fact, if the right insisted, if the voting populace on the right insisted, if that 63% was an actual number that actually reflected their values, and if they ever want to be someone I am capable of respecting, then they better get out there and lead some protests. They better block some senators' driveways. They better get loud. They can't wait to take a gun to a peaceful BLM protest and try to goad somebody into giving them a chance to finally, get off, I guess. But they won't march up with their gun and say, there should be, hey, Senator, look at this. There should be reasonable restrictions on this. Because let me tell you, Senator, this could kill a whole crowd of people. This thing in my hands right now could end many, many, many lives very quickly. Yours would be the first of a few dozen before I had to reload. That that would make me actually consider the fact that they were, serious adults. But they're not serious adults. I've seen no evidence that they're serious adults, and they should not be treated as such. GOP voters, Republican voters, if you want to know, I hear you all the time whining that people don't take you seriously. It's just filling your diapers and getting red-faced. People don't take you seriously. This is why. This is one of a couple of things that you'd have to do for the rest of the adults in the world to, bother giving a damn about your opinion. Because you have demonstrated that your priorities are bad and they are not worthy of respect. And you have such an aggressively ignorant understanding of how the world works that you are willing to let children die over it. And apart from the soul warping knowledge that children will die again soon, just like at Uvalde, just like at this most recent massacre, just like at Columbine, apart from that knowledge that we're carrying around here in the real world, we also have the knowledge that you, at any moment, could choose to change this by demanding it from your politicians, who are the ones that are causing it. And every day you wake up and you make the choice instead to get mad about Mr. Potato Head. That's who you are in our eyes. So what can you do? Well, right-wingers, you want to gain anything resembling respect during your remaining years on Earth from the rest of us. And by the way, this MAGA madness, it's wearing out. It's ending. If not this year, then next. If not next year, then the one after. But America has demonstrated it doesn't have patience for you. So if, during the rest of your lives, you don't want to be viewed as the shameful wretches you have demonstrated yourselves to be, then stop acting like that. Get out there and protest for gun reform. Lefties, keep doing what you're doing. Keep the pressure up. And if you are a friend of a right-winger, ask them why they don't protest for reasonable gun reform. Because apparently 63% of them believe in reasonable gun reform. I sure as hell don't see it. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Zix says, I'm not into basketball, but I'm officially a San Antonio Spurs fan from now on. Same. He says Coach P is a legendary coach in basketball. Coach P. Oh, Greg Popovich. I am actually dumb. Real Bill P says Coach P went off earlier this season. He is legendary for his speeches about politicians and their BS. Yeah, I'm with Zix on this one, baby. I am 100% a Spurs fan these days, as of that segment. Hell of a guy. If anyone has earned my support, that's the one. You know what? We actually have a video recommendation from a little while back that good old Wicked Foxy Dragon sent our way. It's for a video by Jon Stewart, and despite my railing against, actually, let's be honest, in part because of my railing against right-wing voters. Thought it would be useful to look at this. We finally have a time where I think this fits in the conversation well. Let me do an intro, though. So this is a recommendation by Wicked Foxy Dragon. It was Jon Stewart going around playing devil's advocate, and I'm sure we're about to get demonetized, but going around playing devil's advocate, asking folks around the world, leaders around the world, why they don't see America as their leader anymore. It's very enlightening, and believe it or not, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about working with people you don't get along with. Here it is.
What if we just give them France?
France?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. France gets us into a lot of trouble, and then when we want to invade countries, they won't even let us fly over their territory. What's the worst country in the European Union?
Thank God for that.
Would you say
I rank
France?
absolutely
Just blink
not.
twice if it's France.
France is an ally. It's always been in the second wars that you fought, so it's not going to change teams now.
I think they are reliable for now. If one of the Le Pens, whatever generation France can take its pick, but if that happens, then we're in deep trouble.
So the record shows that it's France.
I haven't blinked.
I'll wait.
I was going to try to let that whole thing go, and turns out I'm not. Just for context, if you're not familiar, Marie Le Pen is a fasci leader who's been elected in France, and so was her daddy. Just the scum of the earth, and not in a Wellington slightly affectionate way. It genuinely, they are reject human beings. If God took mulligans, he would have done so on all Le Pens.
The key is France. I'm very concerned. What if, for World War III, I can promise French a 4-day war week? You only have to bomb 4 days out of the week. If you're acceptable with that, we'll bring you aboard.
You have a doubt about France, but I have also a doubt about the US. You know, what is required from us is not to invade other countries, like you did.
I'm afraid, as far as I'm concerned, the US are the biggest destabilizing influence.
We know that America was built on genocide, slavery, and colonialism.
Do you trust the United States, yes or of course?
There is no such a thing as a yes or no in politics.
America was built on freedom.
Freedom for who, though?
Americans.
You got to stop this America first, because all the lunatics here, they love saying, well, then it's Hungary first, it's Germany first, but not everyone can be first.
That's the point of America first, is not everybody can be first, it's us.
Well, but that's a bit contradictory with your plan of being the captain of the team, because when you are a captain of the team, you don't say America first. What you say is you stand with some principles that can unite your team. So the problem with your America first
I'm gonna stop you right there.
America first is America alone.
What? I was reeling. These withering ad hominem attacks, really, on America had me seeking comfort and reassurance, the kind I could only get from another member of the media.
I'll be honest, I'm mostly interrupting so that the algorithm doesn't pick up on that very much not in YouTube music song.
Named French journalist Leah Salamé.
Do you understand? Do you understand why you are
right.
being hated by some people in the world?
No, we've given them nothing but really great shows, music, Drake, although he's Canadian, jeans. How much more can we give?
To be loved?
Thank you, yes.
We're friends with the US, but sometimes it's hard to follow you, you know? Sometimes, how to tell you that? I mean, sometimes we don't trust you. And we have reasons for that. Listen, you know, I'm French, but I was born in Lebanon. I have specificity.
Or in Lebanon.
Yeah, I was born in Lebanon.
Okay.
Okay, so I know how you Americans acted in the Middle East, how you acted in Iraq, how you acted in Afghanistan.
But that was
come
an anomaly. That's the exception to the.
No, it's the
rule.
exception. It's
Leah,
history. You came there and then you withdrew in 24 hours and you left the country for the Taliban. And you know, Afghanistan and Iraq, it's our borders, man.
No,
it's our borders.
No,
so we have to deal with millions of refugees coming when you withdraw. So we have memory of you also. So of course we're friends with you, but we have memory.
I don't know if you know this. We were spreading democracy as a beacon of freedom in the world. So I just want to make clear that, you know, sometimes when you spread democracy, it's like a buffet. Are there crumbs on the floor? Yes, sometimes things fall. But we've laid out a beautiful meal for the world.
Yeah, what are the latest successes?
Dine on, the latest successes. Well, you know, it's interesting. It's funny that you bring that up. Let's say we didn't do the Middle East necessarily perfectly. And let's say we destabilized many countries and killed tens of thousands of people and drove millions of refugees that destabilized other Western countries. Let's say all of that is true.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't have a follow-up to that. I was just saying, let's all say
so
that.
let's be honest.
Really just included that last part to give you the regular reminder that George W. Bush belongs in prison. And the world will start taking us more seriously when they see us lock up Donald Trump, throw him in a prison cell for the way he behaved, specifically in regards to Ukraine, because that had effect immediately outside of our borders. In fact, could be argued that Trump's behavior, set aside the nonsense we've been hearing, let's just talk for real. Trump made us look so weak as an ally of Ukraine that Putin felt comfortable invading again. Don't forget, under Obama's watch, he took Crimea. He just took it. 2014, baby. When we put Trump in prison for Ukraine, the world will start taking us a little bit more seriously. When we put Bush in prison, if we have the wherewithal to make that happen, we have the decency to do that at a minimum, the world will start taking us more seriously. But are those people featured, are those countries represented by the interviewees there, are they going to stop being our allies? No. A good jumping off point to talk about how we should be acting within this country. Because even if we don't do those other things that I've just recommended, put the correct people in prison, start acting like mature-ass adults who don't have to constantly wrestle with half our population being blinded by a propaganda news channel. Even if we don't take care of any of that, they're still going to be our allies, at least as things are going right now. Well, how does that work? It's because they understand the difference between an ally and a pal, friend. I'm not going to change my opinion on right-wing voters until right-wing voters do what I recommended earlier. You've seen me multiple times. In fact, I dedicate a whole day a week to making progress here, trying to work with right-wingers. That is as much, I hope, for your benefit as for the actual things that we're trying to accomplish there. Because you can make an alliance with someone and restrict it entirely to the issue that is of mutual concern. Two rival hyenas fighting over a carcass can turn around and fight off the lion that came on by, and then turn back around and go right back to fighting over the carcass again. Because for a moment, they see the greater threat. All I want to point out is we here in America can behave the way whole countries that have to deal with the United States can behave in order to get items of mutual interest pursued. And it's often the trick of funny enough, it's often the trick of the people that tend to be in the center to make it seem like their opposition is so strong, so unreasonable that we'll never, ever be able to agree with them on anything. That's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. We need two things for it. We need, number one, to make clear where our mutual interests are. For example, getting big money out of politics. For example, theoretically, reasonable gun reform. Theoretically. That is one where I've yet to be convinced that the people that say they are for it are sincerely for it, because I just don't see them out there. Unless they're lefties. Unless they're people who are maybe even not lefties, but are voting Democratic already. The other thing we need is to be crystal clear about what our items of mutual interest are. And that's thing number one. Thing number two is we need to believe. We need to approach it as though it's possible to work with them. That doesn't mean lie to them. Here's a benefit to telling somebody that you won't like them. It takes the pressure off of them to pretend like they're ever going to like you. It takes the pressure off of them that you're going to try to sell them on the rest of your beliefs. They hate, most likely. Full-on hate. Just assume the rest of your beliefs. That's fine, because it's irrelevant. Don't assume, if it's a thing that they've stated they believe in as well, don't assume you can't get them to work with you. And in fact, you should try to get them to work with you. And in fact, if you personally develop a talent, develop an ability, a skill for talking about these issues and keeping them hyper-focused on just the issues that you know are of mutual interest, you can have a lot more sway than you once did. Because you're not only going to be influencing your side, theoretically, to fight hard by telling them you care about these issues and go get them, Tiger. But you got a cousin down south who you've been talking to who also wants big money out of politics. You can theoretically get them to get their right-leaning representative demanding the same thing. It is possible. It does happen. This generation, by which I mean the people alive on Earth right now, are less good at it. Because for, 30 years, we've been having cable news media sum up these issues in sound bites that fit between commercials. I don't know if this all was intentional or not. But for whatever reason, the impression has sunk in that there is not a thing that we can work with the other side on. But you could have somebody who full on wants, I don't know, America to be taken over and run entirely by, what's a rando country? Taiwan, for some reason. Oh, I picked the most controversial one. Let's say Canada for the sake of the conversation. A Canadian who has moved here and says, no, I'm all for the American government being dissolved, Canada taking it over. The point being, theoretically, you don't agree with them on that. Theoretically, you want America to remain its own country, theoretically. But both of you might agree that no matter what happens in the long run, in the short run, we got to get rid of this pothole in our neighborhood. Keep your mind open to those opportunities. And just remember, getting someone to agree to work with you does not mean that you're asking them to like you, or you're required to like them, or either of you are required to pretend like you do. You just share what the plan is and ask them if they've got a better one. Give it some thought. Cutting it close with that one. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Zix says, play it again. 47% Repubs, 63 for total population. Thank you for the correction. All right, 47%. Still, 47%. Theoretically, that's half of Republicans that are insisting on or say they are for reasonable gun reform. That should be then what, 35 million people out there and demanding? I mean, come on. Dean Oldfield says, I'm exhausted. I've been doing this for 40 years. Yeah, I think you've been given bad strategies for 40 years. Truly. I think the system that you have been living in for the last 40 years, and I say this having lived in it for the last 40 years, has been designed essentially like a hamster wheel for you to get on. But one thing that the old guard of American leadership did not prepare for was the advent of the internet. They didn't see that coming. The free sharing of knowledge, sure, it's led to some disastrous things. Oh, Lordy, yes. But it's also led to people being able to organize much better and to understand what the obstruction is to getting things done with much more clarity. So I do believe, first of all, thank you, Dan. Thank you. The work you've done for the last 40 years, the votes you've been putting out there in theory, the opinions you've been sharing for the last 40 years, they've kept America from being, believe it or not, worse than it is. Thank you. It's been a hell of a fight. I got good news for you. Likely to start being something that doesn't exhaust you, but instead energizes you. Because now we can watch the progress happening, and it's starting to happen faster and faster. In other words, you're winning. You've been having this fight for the last 40 years. Good news. MAGA is the roar of a dying beast. There was people saying this going into 2016, and then there was a panic when it came to be. But yeah, a lot of people were saying, go look at Sam Cedar, for example, the Republican Party is dying, and it's going to get uglier before it goes. And even though there was tons of surprises along the way, even though the specifics certainly weren't predicted, more or less that's the pattern we're seeing. And on the other side of this, if we survive this, victory for you, Dan. So well done, and keep it up. The Justice Department says, Zix1326, the Justice Department can't handle all the prosecuting that needs to be done. We really don't need to start up a whole new set on Bush. I disagree. Disagree strongly. We do need to. We have an obligation to other countries around the world who we damaged, in some cases, irreparably. It is our responsibility to prosecute George H.W. Bush. H.W., fuck. Sorry, George W. Bush. If we could dig him up and resurrect him just to put him in prison for Iran-Contra, yeah, H.W. too. But we do have an obligation to do that, in my opinion. That said, I think you're right about the prosecution, and I've got a thought on that. So, and I was going to end the stream, but then you hit me with that good comment. Now I gotta wet my beak a little bit. So what do we do about that? You're right. Basically, at this point, the majority of the Republican Party is guilty in some way of treason. Think about that. Aiding and abetting Jan 6ers, lying to Congress, defying subpoenas. What do we do about that? Because you're right, there is a finite number of employees in the Justice Department, and there's a finite amount of minutes we will be alive on this earth to do anything about it. And it won't make a difference if we finally get around to prosecuting these people in 100 years. We use that as a strength. We are going, theoretically, if we keep pushing the way we have been pushing, if we keep doing the work that we, the people, have been doing, we keep organizing, we keep making our voices heard, we are going to hear about people getting their crimes forgiven. And we just need to make sure that one rule is stuck to. You get your treason forgiven, and I hate to say it because I would prefer all of them, just be tossed in cells. But my personal taste aside, there's interests of practicality at hand. You only get your treason forgiven in exchange for being honest with the Justice Department about who said what when, to help them get convictions for other people that committed treason. I realize it's not satisfying, but it is the way to, number one, put on the record what everybody did. Number two, establish that it was not acceptable. And number three, get the organizers. Get the worst of them. Get the most dangerous off the streets in a cell where they can think about what they did and how they chose to live their lives. It's going to reduce the number of people way down, and it's going to make the prosecution of the remaining people way easier. When you have 5, 6 aides that instead of doing 5 to 20 turn on their boss, when you have a lieutenant governor flipping on the governor, yeah, that'll make it fast. And we've already gone over the hill, just over the peak on that particular roller coaster. I expect to see a hell of a lot more happening in rapid succession. In fact, if you want to encourage it to go faster, believe it or not, the answer, in my humble opinion, is to encourage your state's attorney general, if you live in one of the 5 fake elector states, which are Arizona, New Mexico, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, and Nevada. If you live in one of the 5 fake elector states that have not yet started a state-level investigation, Michigan and Georgia got it already, baby, encourage them to do that. Why? Because not only will they be helping Merrick Garland, who clearly needs it, not only will they be helping him by picking up some of this investigative load, but they'll be providing all of us with more people who could potentially flip. In other words, will you drop these state charges against me if I help Merrick Garland with his federal investigation? Just something the states could do. They could say, okay, yeah, I choose to see that as a sign of reform. We will, what do they call it? Commute the rest of your sentence if you offer testimony and it is true and accurate and yada, yada, yada. So there is the solution to that. It's not to give anybody a pass for free. It's to give passes only to people who decide to join the good guys. Zick says, unfortunately, it takes a whole lot longer and resources to... Oh, wait, let me read the whole thing. If Zick says, if we can get more enforcement like Bragg is trying with Jordan, then maybe our laws will have a little bit of bite. Yeah, thank Christ. What's happening with Orange is necessary. So Bragg v. Jordan. Unfortunately, it takes a whole lot longer and resources to get these guys for treason than picking up a dude smoking a joint in a parking lot. Yeah, but a lot of them are dumb enough to record themselves, and this was... You know, the advantage here is how serious and wide-reaching it was. Remember, there are no disadvantages. There's only differences. So on the one hand, yeah, we have all these people to prosecute. Good Lord, that's a massive amount of work. But that means we have a big group of people to choose from. All right, who's dumbest? Who is least able to cover their tracks? Who left the biggest snail trail of evidence? Okay. Well, look at that. That evidence implicates that person who we suspected. That evidence implicates that person. Oh, you're going to flip? You're going to tell what all of them did. Great. Oh, all of you want to flip now. Fantastic. Well, it so happens that we would much rather get the leader in your state that told you to do this, that you all say told you to do this. So if you're willing to excite and so on and so forth. Ooh, Wicked Foxy Dragon says, do not email Nevada's Secretary of State. Submit a complaint. You can do that online through the SOS website. I will update the links, my friend. Thank you very much. Excellent. All right. Well, this is a 2 for Tuesday. Normally, we would do a stream at 8 p.m., but I got to go arrange it. It's gonna take me longer than 17 minutes, folks. Jesus. 23 minutes. I don't. Math was not. Of all of the strong suits I had in school, they were fictional, so math wasn't included. But as soon as I can, probably a 10 p.m. stream, we will do our second 2 for Tuesday stream. Thank you for joining me on this one, on this belated first stream. Good to see you all. Hope to see you there. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. We'll see you next time. Oh, my name's Jake.